Have you ever stood beside the sea at dusk and felt the air press close, as if something unseen were listening? Have you heard the silence of water that waits but does not move? There are moments, just before the stars appear, when the sea grows too still, when even the tide forgets its rhythm. In those moments, something old stirs beneath the waves. Not in anger, not in joy, but in memory. And so begins the tale of a ship that vanished, not in storm, but in stillness. They called her the Lark of St. Augustine. She was a lean brigantine, copper-ribbed and well-fed on trade winds, built in Havana with bloodwood timbers and fitted in silence. Her sails caught whispers better than they caught wind. Her hull never groaned, even in strain. She was a quiet ship, a listening ship. And for 7 years she crossed the southern Caribbean with grace and no ill tale, until one night, in the dead hush between Tortuga and the far Bahamian banks, she simply stopped. The moon hung high, sharp and silver, casting no warmth. The stars were tight and breathless. The sea had laid down its breath. Not a wave stirred. The lanterns along the rigging flickered not with wind but as if shivering in dread. And beneath the stillness, something waited. Below deck, in the forward crew quarters, a young helmsman named Eli sat tracing a map with his thumb. Not because he did not know where they were, but because he feared they were not anywhere at all. He had been raised in the salt marsh villages near Leogan, taught early to read stars and water like scripture, and tonight the stars made no sense. They had rearranged, shifted, grown too bright, too silent. Elio had asked the quartermaster if perhaps they had drifted north into some current's trick. The quartermaster, a slow man named Rogo, only said, "No wind, no current, no trick. We've stopped, like a ship come home." But they were not home. At midnight, the lookout called down a single word: sail. There was no haste, no alarm, only that one word, flat, distant. The crew gathered topside, boots muted on wet wood. And there, drifting against all nature, was a ship. Black-sailed, no flag, no signal, no wait. It was close, too close. No one had seen it approach. It simply was. The sails were wrong. Not of cloth or canvas, but a material that shimmered without wind, like silk dipped in oil. It had no crew visible upon its deck, only a single figure. A woman in white, seated cross-legged near the prow, her hair hanging like seaweed, her face bowed. Eli felt something rise in his chest. Not fear, not awe, something older, like the memory of a lullaby his mother used to hum, one he hadn't thought of since her death. It curled behind his ribs and hummed. The captain, a hard woman named Merce, ordered lantern signals. No reply. She ordered the cannon lit, but not fired. Still, no response. Only that ship, motionless as a portrait, sails full despite the dead wind. Then the woman looked up. Her eyes were hollow. Not empty, but hollow, as if carved into her skull and filled with wind. And she raised her hand, a gesture not of warning, not of greeting, but of invitation. Eli felt his legs move. He stepped onto the plank that had been laid to bridge the slight gap between the vessels. No one remembered placing it. No one stopped him. He boarded the black-sailed ship. Its deck gave no sound beneath his boots, not even the soft scuff of leather. The boards were cold, though the night was warm. The air smelled of brine and lilies, as if death had taken perfume. The woman said nothing. She stood and walked toward the mast. There, nailed to its heart, was a mirror, round, silver-edged, untarnished. It did not reflect the moon. It did not reflect Eli. Only the woman. She turned and looked at him. He stepped forward, and then silence. When the crew awoke the next morning, the Lark of St. Augustine floated alone. No black ship, no Elio, no bridge between hulls. No sign that anything had ever been beside them, but open sea. Only one thing remained. On the main deck, Where Elia had last stood lay a single silver coin, not minted, not cast. Smooth on one side, and on the other, etched deep in salt, he chose to listen. They searched the waters for 3 days, found no wreckage, no sail, no trace. And when they made port, those who spoke of it were cursed with dreams. Dreams of a woman in white, weeping at a mast. Dreams of silence so deep it folded time. Dreams of voices whispering from mirrors, asking, "Would you follow too?" The coin was passed from hand to hand, never warm, never cold. It eventually sank, falling through the boards of a tavern floor in Nassau. No one went looking, but they say, even now, when the sea grows too still, and the stars blink strangely, and the air forgets to breathe, a ship with black sails drifts just beyond the eye's reach. And sometimes you'll hear a name, softly spoken, never shouted, never sung. Ilaro. He chose to listen, and the sea has never stopped whispering since. But the mists hold another tale, one lit by bone and flame. Have you ever seen a light where no light should be? A glow not cast by fire or sun, but something older, something not made but remembered. There are places in the Caribbean where maps lie, where islands rise and vanish like breath upon a mirror. Some sailors call these mirages, others call them hauntings, but there are those who know better. Isla Vale is one such place. It does not drift. No, that would imply movement. Isla Vale waits. It stirs into sight only when the sea forgets to hide it. A rock-shod isle, hemmed by coral teeth too narrow for trees, too quiet for birds. But ships find it, or are found by it, just the same. This is the story of one such ship, the Amparo, and of one soul who came ashore with a lantern lit by no living flame. His name was never known, but the one who saw him first was a girl called Sarah. Sarah lived alone with her father in a lighthouse that no longer warned ships, because none dared pass that way. Her father, once a map maker, had taken to silence. He spoke only to the sea now, whispering apologies. Sarah grew used to the hush. Her voice kept company by wind and the creak of rusted pulleys. Each evening she lit the great lens despite the world forgetting it. She said it was to keep the dark from getting lonely. Then, one night, the dark lit itself. The moon was thin, but the water glowed. Not green as it sometimes does with algae, but bone white, ghost lit, and floating into the bay came a ship not made of timber, but driftwood and sorrow. It had no sails, only ropes tangled like hair. Its mast was cracked but unbroken, and its helm turned of its own accord, though no hand touched it. On its bow stood a boy, young, barefoot, salt-crusted. He held a lantern made of ribs shaped not as a cage but as a cradle, and within it a pale blue flame swayed like breath. He said nothing. Sarah, half dreaming, descended the crag steps to the bay's edge. The boy walked across the shallows, though his feet left no wake. He came to her without fear, and handed her the lantern. It was light, yet heavy in her hands, warm but without heat. It hummed, not with fire but with memory. Still, the boy said nothing. Instead, he turned, pointed west, toward the deeper sea. Then, like a figure stepped from wind, he vanished. Sarah's father did not see, but in the morning he found her staring into the flame. She did not speak for 3 days. On the 4th, she whispered, "He's still looking." For what? Her father asked, but she did not answer. She began lighting the lantern each night, placing it at the edge of the bluff instead of the tower. The lighthouse flame flickered jealous. But Sarah kept vigil, waiting for something, though she did not know what. Then the dreams began. She dreamed of a ship beneath the sea, trapped not by wreckage, but by promise. A vessel that had made a vow never to sail again, unless lit by a flame born from sorrow, cradled by bone, and the boy had carried it. Night after night, the lantern grew brighter. It sang, softly, like breath drawn through hollow shell. And with its rising glow, Sarah began to see them, ships, distant, silent, formless, but present, ringing the edge of the horizon, like mourners at a grave. Each night they drifted closer. Each night Sarah waited, the lantern cradled in her arms. Her father pleaded, begged. "Blow it out," he said. "You don't know what it calls." But Sarah only whispered, "They're lost. They're just trying to come home." Then, one night, the sea stood up, not with waves, with presence. The water grew still, but full, heavy, pressed. The air trembled with something unsaid. The lighthouse lens shattered without sound, and from the fog came the ships. Dozens, maybe more. Formless but tall, wide and hollow. Lanterns of bone glowed at each prow. No crews, no sound but the hum. They did not dock, did not moor. They encircled Isla Vale like a prayer, and waited. Sarah stood at the cliff's edge, hair whipped by a wind that came from nowhere. The lantern hummed in her hands, and she knew it was time. She descended the path alone, and as she stepped into the surf, the flame flared, not violently but completely. As if waking, the sea opened, not parted, but received, and she walked beneath. The ships followed. The light was swallowed whole. By morning, the sea had returned to its hush. The lighthouse was gone. No sign of wreckage, only a bare rock where it once stood. And Sarah's father, long silent, wrote a single line before vanishing himself. The lost do not wish to be found, only remembered. To this day, sailors report a glow in waters no map names, a blue hush, cradled in bone. Some say it brings peace. Others say it draws you in, quiet as sleep, and those who see it are never the same. For they've heard the lantern sing, and the sea, once it remembers your name, never quite lets go. And further still, the veil thins once more. There is yet another story waiting in the hush. Have you ever promised something you could never take back? Have you ever whispered a vow so quiet, so desperate, that not even the sky heard, but the sea did? There are promises that linger, words that sink instead of float. They find the trench, the deep black hush, where sun has never touched, and they stay. And if the sea believes your vow, it may answer. This is the story of one such answer, and of a ship that should never have sailed again. Far from the bustle of port and the glitter of island lanterns, past where maps dare their last scratch, there floats a patch of sea where no depth has ever been measured. Fishermen call it La Boca de Silencio, the mouth of silence. No wind lives there, no stars reflect, no birds pass overhead. But once, just once, something rose from it. A ship, black and breathless, carved from ebony, so dark it shimmered blue in moonlight. It bore no sails, no crew, no anchor, just a mast, unlike any seen before. It was carved in the shape of a woman. She stood tall, bound in flowing gowns of etched wood, her face half turned, as if listening to something beneath the surface. And across her lips were stitches, not of rope or wire, but strands of sea thread, woven with barnacle and sorrow. They called her the widow's mast, and this is how she came to be. Years before her rising, there lived a captain named Armon, feared and respected, both for his blade and his silence. He commanded a corsair called the Morning Tide, swift and cold. But Armon had not always been this way. Once, he had loved. Her name was Moroi, a healer's daughter from a coastal village, swallowed by tides long ago. She was sea-born, sea-bright. She did not fear storms, nor the salt, nor the restless look in Armon's eyes. They were married, beneath a windless sky. He made her a promise, no tide will take you from me. Not ever, but the sea is hungry, and the sea is cruel. One summer, when the morning tide returned from voyage, the village lay silent, no smoke, no laughter, no footprints on the sand. Gone, Only a single shawl, her shawl tangled in the rocks, smelling of salt and grief. Some said it was raiders, others, a sickness. But Amun knew it was the sea. The same sea he had once tamed. The sea that had waited until he left her alone. He broke his sword. He tore his sails. He burned the maps. And that night, alone at the edge of the reef, he made a vow. He whispered it with blood on his palm and salt on his tongue. If I cannot follow her in life, then I will follow her in death. But I will not drown. I will go deeper than death. I will become the silence. The waves stilled. The stars blinked. And the sea listened. For 7 days Amun disappeared. His men found his boat drifting empty, but not wrecked. And on the 7th night, something rose from the deep trench where he had vanished. Not the man. A ship. Its hull bore his name etched in reversed script, not carved, but grown, like roots of a tree. And on its mast, the woman. Moroi. But her face was wrong. Not soft. Not kind. Her brows were furrowed in warning. Her lips sewn shut. A silence deeper than death. The ship floated, but never moved, anchored by absence, tethered to the vow. Years passed. Storms broke around it. Birds fell quiet as they neared. No barnacle clung. No salt corroded. It was neither dead nor living. It simply was. Sailors told tales, always whispered, never sung. Of a ship that appeared when the tide went still. Of a mast that wept in moonlight. Of a voice that could be heard only when your ears were underwater. The voice said, he promised too deeply. And sometimes, when the fog rolled too thick, other ships would see her silhouette near. Not approaching, not sailing, just there, like a thought you cannot shake. And once, a child aboard a merchant vessel claimed she saw the mast move, that the woman had turned her head, ever so slightly, and her stitches had bled. No one believed her, but they all stayed awake that night. It is said that the widow's mast still floats, waiting for one of two things, for Amun to be forgiven, or for someone else to make a vow deep enough, dark enough, that the sea forgets his. Neither has happened, yet the mast weeps still, some say, and the trench beneath still listens. So if you ever find yourself at sea, and the water goes still, and the stars forget their names, do not speak. Not even a whisper, for the sea hears. And promises are the only currency it will never forgive. But listen, there is yet another name whispered in the wind. A song beneath the keel. A choir no tongue should know. Have you ever heard music where none was played? A sound not carried on air, but on silence. There is a reef along Jamaica's silver coast. Not marked, not mapped. It hums, they say, when the tide retreats too quickly. Not with voice, with ache. They call it the singing grave. No fish swim there, no gull cries. Even the wind forgets itself near those shallows, but the sea remembers. And it sings. This is the story of Thomas, a boy who built a ship not to sail but to listen. He was the son of a shipwright, born with salt in his breath and driftwood beneath his cradle. But where others heard creak and crash and gust, Thomas heard more. He heard harmony in the keel's groan. He heard sighs in the curve of the mast. And sometimes when night was deep and the tide was breathless, he heard music. Not tunes, not melody, something older, like voices, submerged. He asked his father once, "Why do some boats sound like they're remembering something?" His father only said, "Because some wood comes from trees that were never quiet." Thomas did not ask again, but he listened. And when he was 15, he built a ship, not large, not grand, but precise. Each plank soaked in still water before fitting. Each nail placed not by force, but by hush. He did not name it. He did not bless it. He let it be. It sailed once and never returned, because Thomas never brought it back. The morning after he set off, villagers found the boat adrift in the cove. still tied as if it had never left. But Thomas was gone. No splash, no storm, no wind, only silence and a hum, low and rhythmic, from the reef just beyond. They searched, days passed. Then someone dove near the reef. They did not find Thomas, but they heard something, faint, mournful, like singing from behind glass. No words, just breath, just presence. One diver swore he heard his mother's lullaby, though she had died 20 years before. Another swam down and came up gasping, eyes wide. They're not just singing, they're waiting. The reef was declared cursed, but legends don't stay buried. Years passed, and then another boat vanished. This time a merchant vessel. The Fern of Port Maria. Clear skies, gentle water. Gone, except the keel. It floated, bare, days later. Polished, smooth, carved, not by blade, but by song. No rot, no barnacles. Just a name etched into the beam, Thomas, and the reef began to hum louder. It was no longer mere whisper. It was choir. Divers returned. Most heard nothing, but those who listened, truly listened, heard voices. Layers, generations, men, women, children, some crying, some humming, some naming names, and in the middle of it, always a boy's voice, softer than the rest, not pleading, not mourning, just keeping time. They say Thomas did not die. They say he built a ship too perfect, a hull too hollow, a vessel so quiet it opened a passage not to the next shore, but the one beneath. Not under water, under memory. The reef had once been forest. That forest had heard too many last breaths, storms that had no mercy, ships that broke like promises, and the wood remembered. Thomas gave it form, and now he conducts, not with hands, not with eyes, with stillness. If you sail near that coast, and your oars grow quiet, and your crew grows hushed, be wary. You may hear your own name, sung sweetly. You may hear lullabies from your childhood, voices long gone. The reef does not trick. It only remembers, and if you answer, if you sing back, you may join the choir. Not in death, in echo. They say one ship returned, years ago, its hold filled with water that never spilled. And in the water, voice, no bodies, no bones, just sound. One voice whispered, "The sea does not forget those who give it music." The ship sank the next day, but the voice still sings. So if you find yourself above the singing grave, hush your heart and do not hymn, for the sea may answer. But even now, another tale drifts close, not sung, but sworn. A name red as rust, a promise darker than night. The captain who never died. Have you ever met someone who felt older than the world around them? Not in years, but in weight. There are stories of a man who never touched land again. Not because he could not, but because he would not. His ship moved through water, like a memory barely recalled. His name is long lost, but his oath was never broken. He is called only the captain who never died. And his ship, the Weeper's Wake, its sails were black, stitched not from cloth, but from mourning veils stolen from windows and graves. Its figurehead was a woman turned away, carved in mid-sob, her arms reaching for someone who had already left. The hull bore no name. The name rode in whispers, in fear, in reverence, and in regret. But this is not a tale of him alone. This is the tale of Anna. She boarded the Weeper's Wake with no invitation, no map, no shoes, only a blade carved from coral and a brother's name sealed behind her teeth. The crew did not see her until dawn. A girl curled like driftwood near the anchor well. She did not speak. She did not eat. She stared at the horizon with eyes that had seen too much and still wanted more. When the captain came to her, his coat was red with rust and sea blood. He did not ask who she was. He only said, Those who come aboard must trade. What will you give? She held out the blade. He shook his head. Not what you have, what you'll lose. She looked up, her voice as calm as fog. I've already lost it. And so he let her stay. The captain, they say, was a collector. Not of gold, not of charts, not even of souls, but of last breaths. He kept them in glass bottles, each sealed with wax drawn from storm candles. When someone died aboard his ship, he would kneel beside them, draw in their final exhale, and cork it. The bottles lined his cabin walls, floor to ceiling, and each one sang when the wind passed through the ship. Softly, a lullaby of endings. The crew feared him, loved him, hated him, followed him. For years the ship never made port, never cast anchor, never touched land, only sailed, endless. But Anna had not come for wonder. She had come for truth. Her brother Mikhail had vanished a year before. A simple courier aboard a sugar barge, lost somewhere between Hispaniola and the Caymans. They said it was pirates. They said it was storm. But Anna had found a piece of his coat, torn and soaked, along the trail of the weeper's wake, and a whisper in a marketplace had told her, the captain takes those who beg to live, and those who beg to die. Anna had not begged. She had promised, and promises. The sea does not forget. Weeks passed aboard the black-sailed ship. She watched, listened. The crew spoke little, their voices subdued, their eyes never meeting hers. At night, Anna crept to the captain's quarters. Behind his door the bottles whispered. Some moaned, some sang, some wept, and one, just one, hummed a tune she remembered, a tune her brother used to hum when frightened. She did not cry, not yet. Instead, she waited. Then one night, a storm rose, but not a sky storm, a sea storm, the kind without wind, the kind that pulled upward, not down. The ship groaned, the sails held, and Anna stepped into the captain's cabin. He stood before the bottles, arms folded, eyes dark as drowned wood. You should not be here, he said. She stepped forward. That bottle, the blue one. Let me see it. His lips did not move. You already know whose breath it is, he said. She did not flinch. I want it. He turned slowly. You want a death. What would you do with it? I want to return it. The captain's face shifted, not with anger, with sorrow. No one has ever asked that. Then he stepped closer. Her coral blade trembled in her hand. He wasn't meant to die. He didn't choose it. You stole it. I offered peace. You offered escape. Silence. Outside, the sea rose higher, not with waves but with voices. The bottles began to hum louder. The ship's hull groaned. The captain looked past her, toward the carved woman on the wall. She begged me, he said, long ago, before this, to bring her love back. I failed. His fingers brushed the blue bottle. It was hers. Anna's grip tightened. Then it ends, with me. She stepped forward and struck the bottle with her blade. It shattered. There was no glass, only wind, no shrapnel, only silence, and then a sound. A single note, clear, soft, familiar. Mikhail's voice. Ina. Her knees buckled. She reached out, not to hold, but to feel. And for one moment, no longer, the ship breathed. Every bottle sang. The crew wept. The sails collapsed. And the captain, for the first time, fell to his knees. The sea claimed the ship, not violently, but reverently, as if receiving something sacred. Anna was never seen again. But some say a girl now walks across open water, barefoot, bladeless, singing. When ships go still, truly still, her voice can be heard. Not sad, not joyful, grateful. And the captain? They say he floats still, no longer seeking breath, no longer taking oaths, just listening, waiting for a voice that never returned. And when the tide holds its breath long enough, you may hear it. His whisper, "Forgive me, but the sea has one final breath yet to give, deeper than all the rest. A bell no one rings, yet all must answer." Have you ever heard a sound so distant it seemed to rise from inside your bones? Not loud, not near, but certain, as if it had always been ringing just beneath your heartbeat. There is a bell at the bottom of the sea. It lies far beyond coral and current, deeper than the pressure that breaks bones and time. No hand rings it, no tide disturbs it, but once every 100 years it tolls, only once, and when it does, the dead rise, not in anger, not in flesh, but in memory. This is the story of Mael, a cartographer who had never seen the world he mapped. He was born blind, and yet his fingers moved across parchment like water across stone. He traced coastlines from memory, measured tides by rhythm, and drew islands from the smell of their wind. His maps were never wrong. When asked how he knew, he only said, "The sea tells me." They laughed at first. Then they stopped, because his maps led ships through fog, found lands no sailor had charted, and warned of storms days before the clouds rose. Mael did not seek fame. He only listened. Each morning he sat at the edge of a stone quay, fingers resting on damp stone, hearing the world through tide and hush. One day, he stood and said, "The bell is about to ring." No one knew what he meant. He packed no bags. He took no compass. Only a roll of blank parchment, a quill made from stormbird feather, and a small wooden flute that had never played a note. He stepped into a skiff and drifted away from shore. He did not steer. He did not row. The sea carried him. 3 nights passed. On the 4th, stars vanished. Wind fell, and the water beneath grew dark, not with shadow, but with presence. There, in the deepest blue, Mael lowered his hands into the sea and whispered, "I have come to remember." The water shuddered. Far below, deeper than light or language, a tremor moved. Then, the sound, a single toll. No echo, no thunder, just a note so full of memory. It made the sea still. And then, ships, one by one, they rose. Not burst from below, they simply appeared, whole and hollow. Hundreds, thousands. Vessels from every age. Viking cutters, Roman triremes, Chinese treasure ships, pirate sloops, merchant schooners. They glided in silence. No crews, no sails, no need. Their lanterns flickered with blue light, not flame. Each carried one word carved into their deck. A name, a promise, a farewell. Mael stood and began to write. Not drawing ships, but tracing the voices. For the ships sang. All of them. Not in chorus, not in song, but in truth. Each ship whispered the story of its final day. The winds that failed, the hands that trembled, the cries that were never answered. And Mael wept, not for sorrow, but for the rightness of it. The sea was not cruel, it was not kind, it was memory. And memory, when full enough, must return. The dead did not rise to haunt, they rose to finish. Each ship passed Mael in hush. He did not speak. He did not move, only wrote. When the last ship passed, smaller than the rest, barely a rowboat, he laid down his quill and reached for his flute. It had never played a note, until now. He raised it and breathed. One note, and the ships smiled, not in face, but in form. They bowed to him, each dipping slightly, their blue lanterns flaring. And then, one by one, they turned and faded. Not sank, faded, returned to the hush, to the place beneath places. And Mael alone once more closed his eyes. The sea lifted him, carried him back, not to shore, not to land, but upward, to sky. They say a new constellation appeared that night, faint and flickering, shaped like a bell. And beneath it, if the night is windless and the sea perfectly still, sailors hear a whisper, "The sea remembers." And now, so do. Mail never returned, but his map did. Unrolled gently on the steps of a lighthouse that hadn't been lit in years. The map bore no lines. Only a single phrase, written in ink made from salt and silence. To remember is not to weep. It is to sail onward. And now, the bell sleeps once more, but it will ring again, and when it does, the sea will rise, not in flood, in memory. So listen closely when you next sit by the shore, for even the smallest wave might be carrying a name, and even the quietest wind might be calling you home.